Hello, team. Thanks for tuning in to the Clemson Drone Podcast. Before we start the pod, I just want to take a quick minute to let you know about our brand new comprehensive 2-course online program. This is something we just launched in February and are super pumped about. It starts off with our 8-week UAS vocation course. In this class, you'll earn your Part 107 license, learn to fly with our simulator, create maps and models using Drone Deploy, and become a Level 1 thermographer. After that, we're excited to announce our brand new course called UAS Mission Administration. This class is designed for current pilots and UAS program leaders. Over 8 weeks, we'll cover enhanced general knowledge, advanced mission planning, and you'll create your organization's custom standard operating procedure manual using our cutting-edge AI tools. At the end of the course, you'll earn AUVSI's Level 1, 2, and 3 Trusted Operator certifications. Check it all out at clemsondrone.com. Now, back to the pod. Welcome to the Clemson Drone Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Burgett from Clemson University. Join me as I dive into the world of drone technology and explore its impact through the eyes of industry leaders. Hear how drone technology directly supports public agencies, private companies, and entrepreneurs from those leading the innovation. If you're a seasoned UAS program manager or just getting into the game, this is a place to learn from the best to help your program soar to new heights. Make sure you subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a single episode of the Clemson Drone Podcast. At Clemson Drone, the sky is not the limit, it's just the beginning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of the Clemson Drone Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Burgett. I'm excited to kick off this next new season with a returning guest, Tanner Harris of Blue Nose Aerial Imaging. Tanner has a super impressive background in aviation. He served as a naval aviator in the U.S. Navy before moving on to a career with United Airlines. Today, he shares his expertise as a pilot instructor at the United Airlines Flight Training Center in Denver, Colorado, and as a mentor through Blue Nose Aerial Imaging. Tanner, welcome back to the show.
Joe, thanks for having me again, sir. It's good to see you.
All right. Awesome. Well, listen, I am super pumped about this one. We've got some exciting news to share, and some of this is leading right into why I've invited Tanner back to talk with us. So let me just kind of hit these top items here. First, since the end of season 1, we have expanded our presence at the VA to include not just Chapter 33, but also Chapter 31. So if you are a veteran that has access to that, then it's kind of a more comprehensive plan with that VRE program, but we can fit into it with the Clemson Drone program. So 2, we've also launched what we're calling our Career Connection Hub. So if you are an employer or someone who is looking for drone jobs, this is kind of a connection wheel where job posters can post a job, and then those who are interested in those can take advantage of that. So we're really excited about the Connection Hub. Third, and this is a big one, we have launched a brand new flagship course to complement our UAS vocation class. Our new course is an 8-week online class called UAS Mission Administration. This one, a little bit unlike vocation, which vocation is geared for novice pilots, those that are looking to get in the business. UAS Mission Administration is more for seasoned pilots or program managers, so people managing programs. Again, fully online, going to enhance your general knowledge, more mission planning things, standard operating procedure generation, super cool stuff. And we got some really cool tools in there with virtual walkthroughs for our mission planning. And then, of course, we're using AI like everybody is to help us build our SOPs. We've also partnered up with AUVSI. With this new course, you can get all 3 of AUVSI's trusted operator programs. So levels 1, 2, and 3. So super pumped there. And then finally, with all that, if all that wasn't enough, we also launched what we're calling a 1+2+3 entrepreneurial program, where steps 1 and 2 of that are our educational offerings, UAS Vocation and the UAS Mission Administration. So we feel that gives us a really good foundation for getting into the drone business, but then we need to kind of close that loop off, which is really why we've invited Tanner here to talk about it. So the third part of that is joining the Blue Nose Aerial Group, purchasing a franchise, and taking advantage of all of the opportunities that entails. So, but with that though, Tanner, now that I've been just talking, why don't you kind of jump in here a little bit and tell me, what is that third piece? What is Blue Nose Aerials, and just kind of unpack that a little bit?
I love it. I mean, Joe, I mean, the partnership that we have with you guys is just fantastic. And it's so cool to see, how much success that you guys have had, especially in the last year or two. It's just amazing. So, and many of our Blue Nose franchise owners have worked with you in the past as well. So, and they've just got nothing but great things to say. But yeah, for those of you that aren't aware, Blue Nose Aerial Imaging is a nationwide drone services franchise. So our primary goal is to really kind of expedite your business setup process and really focus on profitability as best we possibly can, while we're all kind of collectively working together to build a recognizable brand in this new and emerging drone industry, right? Even though it's only been around for maybe just over a decade or so, it's still new. There's still a lot to learn, still a lot to just kind of refine. So that's where we come in as a franchise model to try to focus on standardization and providing that level of scalability for clients across the country. So yeah, Blue Nose is a nationwide drone service provider.
Okay, awesome. That's a great definition and great backdrop there. So, and speaking of that, and I want to just kind of do a quick disclaimer here. I know that you guys probably listen to lots of podcasts and on YouTubes and whatnot, and there's a lot of quote unquote influencers out there that will interview folks, and there's kind of a fee for endorsement type of thing. Well, one, if my kids were to even remotely call me an influencer, then that would be laughed out of the room. So we're going to set that aside. But I also kind of want to just say that what I just described is not here. Just kind of as an interest in disclosure, I approached Tanner. I knew that Clemson Drone provided really, obviously I'm biased here, but just a really great educational product. And I was really proud of what we did. But we got all this education and then we just kind of left it. And I always felt bad about that. And I didn't feel like we were positioning students to maximize what they learned and bring that out in the real world. So I knew that there's multiple ways of doing that. I suppose we could have offered like additional business classes and things like that. But a much better way is a one-on-one mentorship. And that's why I approached Tanner with this is to really just to kind of close that loop and to take what they learned here and bring it forward. So I just kind of want to bring that as a little bit of a disclaimer before we kind of move forward there. So the way I kind of like to attack the rest of this kind of conversation here, Tanner, if you're okay with it, is I'm going to take the role on as a potential franchise owner. And I'm going to just, I'm going to make up a scenario and I'm going to ask you questions that I think, a potential franchise owner might want to ask. Is that okay to do? Is that a fair way to start?
Perfect. Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Okay. So here's this fictitious scenario. So let's just say that I just finished up, the UAS vocation course at Clemson Drone. I just finished up the UAS Mission Administration course. Let's just say I live in Clemson, South Carolina. So for those of you guys who are not familiar, Clemson's a pretty rural area. We've got a pretty good sized town, Greenville, about 45 minutes away. And we're 2 hours away from Atlanta and then 2 hours the other direction to Charlotte. So that's just kind of geographically where we're at. This Joe guy who taught me some stuff online about drones had said that he knows a guy at Blue Nose and said he's great. And I reached out to Tanner and I set up a Zoom call and that's what we're doing right now. So with that being said, with all that backdrop, Tanner, nice to meet you. So here's my, let's just say I want to buy a franchise. Tell me a little bit about how you can help me set up my company and what does that look like?
Joe, yeah, well, nice to meet you as well, sir. Thanks for reaching out to Blue Nose. I think you're in a great position, albeit rather rural in Clemson, but you've got some major urban areas like Atlanta and Charlotte, like you mentioned, and then the developing area of Greenville. I mean, so there's a lot of opportunity there. So I think you're well positioned for that, just from a local market perspective. But yeah, Blue Nose is designed to expedite your setup process as a business owner, and then really try to focus on your profitability as a franchise owner. That looks like a lot of different things. Sometimes it's Part 107 certification prep. This is why we have this great partnership with Clemson Drones. Sometimes that means, hey, we're going to help you kind of set up your LLC if you haven't done that before within your state. And along those lines, it's important to kind of emphasize that, when you come on board Blue Nose, you're a business owner first. Then
Right.
you're a drone operator, right? So that's a key distinction between our model and some of the other national drone service providers out there. So business ownership requires that you wear a lot of different hats, right? And it's not just flying a drone. So that's one aspect of it, which I think ties directly to what you were just mentioning as far as, okay, well, now I've got this great training and background certification potentially. What now? What's the
Right.
next step? So our job is to provide that level of standardization the tools that are necessary for you to be up and running, whether that's mission planning, data processing, CRM platforms. I can get into all that stuff here in a little bit, but our primary focus is standardized scalability across the country, right? So that's what we're really trying to focus on. That's how we have the prospective franchise owners join our team, go through our onboarding and training process, and then we launch your location, and then it's off to the races, and we're all working together.
Right. And I want to dive into several of those things that you mentioned. We won't do it all at once, but I'm going to pepper them through. So a concern that I might have is, if I'm starting a business, and again, I haven't been doing this for a million years, I'm going to want some mentorship. Because the drones, every mission's unique, everything is unique. So, will you help me with that? Joe's giving me some great, classroom stuff or whatever, but if I got a specific question, do you help me with that? Are there calls? Is there a supplemental training you provide? What kind of support do you offer my emerging company?
Yeah, no, it's that's critically important because in large respects, I think the level of collaboration that we've been really focused on at Blue Nose is one of those intangible benefits, right? And we can't. It's just it's not valuable until you actually plug into it. So for us, that looks like daily collaboration, right? We're all of us, all the franchise owners, myself, and then the rest of the corporate team. We're always communicating on Slack, right? That's our daily messaging platform. Weekly, we'll also have what we call Ask Me Anything or AMA sessions. So I'll host one. Our data scientist, Jason, will host one. Nick is our videographer. He'll host one. So all of these occur, on a weekly basis. And then monthly, we also have our company-wide franchise meetings, right? So we talk about strategic initiatives, what's going well, what's not going well, how can we help out? Maybe it's new national clients or partnerships that we have established, whatever it might be. And then on an annual basis, we have our in-person training workshops, and those are huge. It's a great way not only to one really focus on camaraderie and plug it into the team and all the other franchise owners, but really focusing on that standardized process and gaining that level of efficiency and really leveraging the entire Blue Nose system so that you can take that home and really focus on building your own business. So yeah, there's support all day, all week, all
Right.
month, all year.
Yeah,
That's a big part of it.
that's a ton. What you just kind of rattled off there in terms of touch points, and not just with one person, like I'm sure you have a ton of expertise, but you mentioned like a data scientist. That's an amazing resource to have. So maybe touch on a little bit about the processes and procedures. I mean, you talked a lot about standardization. I heard you say CRM. I know I believe you guys have your own tools for creating 3D maps and models and photogrammetry. So can you talk about maybe more some of those resources that are kind of unique to you guys and what you offer your franchise owners?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a part of coming on board Blue Nose, again, we've mentioned standardization and how important that is. And that's not just in data collection and providing standardized deliverables to clients. It's also a standardized methodology and how we actually work as Blue Nose franchise owners. So that all starts right out of the gate. Once somebody comes on board and signs a franchise agreement, we send over what we call our before takeoff checklist. And that goes through all of the administrative steps, right? Hey, you got to have an LLC. We got to have, XYZ drone equipment. Let's get the insurance policy set up. Let's get your operations portal activated, right? So we go through all of this. And then we also set up your franchise landing page on bluenoseaerial.com. We set up a Google business page for you as well so that you can manage that. We really encourage our franchise owners to be very active on LinkedIn because that's really kind of our social media platform of choice, if you will. That's really where we're reaching the right target audience. But in the day-to-day, in the actual operation itself, it is our operations portal that achieves that level of standardization. Within that, we do everything. This is our main digital hub. So we can generate leads there. We can do mission planning. That's also where we access our photogrammetry engine, right? So that's we call our data processor. So we can create, orthomosaic maps, 3D models, elevation, basically all the deliverables that you need to be able to provide your clients. We can do that through there from more of a technical and inspection standpoint. We also have our CRM platform, our client relationship management platform. So this is more of a traditional sales and marketing tool where we can help generate leads, but also more importantly, kind of cultivate those leads into clients, right? And how do we do that? We can use, digital marketing resources. We can use automation, analytics, automated email sequences, things like that. So that's all baked into the CRM as well. But within that as well is what we call it's our resources folder, right? So this is our collective folder where we've got advertising content, we've got pricing guides, We've got all of the different territory maps that we operate throughout the U.S. So everything is baked into that operations portal. We do all of our quoting and invoicing through there as well, right? So that's really kind of our main digital hub, kind of the back office, if you will. And so that's how we run the business. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure all those are, all those tools and templates are professional looking. So you don't, there's a lot of things that people kind of take for granted, that just creating an invoice, while most established companies, that's just like a click of a button. But if you don't have that set up, or you're, manipulating a Word document, you might be able to like make it look nice once, but then having it reproduced and searchable is a whole different thing. So I totally see the value there. Now, you mentioned territory and you mentioned cultivating clients and whatnot. So talk to me a little bit about like, do I get a territory? Does that mean that nobody else in Blue Nose can go after clients in that area? What happens if there is a client that's a national client? How does that work? And what happens when there's clients between territories? How does that all work?
Yeah, great question. And it's super important because just like almost every franchise model under the sun, whether we're flying drones or making sandwiches, there's typically like some type of territory component built into the franchise agreement. For us, what that currently looks like is a protected territory of 250,000 people. And that's based upon it's a population estimator that we use, and we draw, a polygon on a map, and it's usually highways and railroads, things like that. But anyways, that's we asked the franchise owner to be very strategic about that because they know their local market far better than we would. So they're in Clemson, right? Like I would say, hey, let's make sure that we're looking into specific areas in that region and try to capture that within your territory. Importantly, this is a protected territory, which means the best way to view this is kind of like your own backyard.
Mhm.
No other Blue Nose franchise owner would work within your backyard, but you're not confined to it, right? You can knock out projects across the globe just as long as you're not working in somebody else's backyard, right? So
Right,
that's
right.
that's kind of the agreement right there. You had alluded to our national accounts, and we've got a number of different national accounts in construction, agriculture, renewable energies, telecommunications. So we do work in a lot of different fields. And if you participate in that national accounts program, it's totally optional, but we encourage the franchise owners to join the national accounts program because that's really the strength of our model is our team and our scalability throughout the country. But when you do that, when we have a project that comes from a national account, we would then contact you directly if you're the closest franchise owner, right? Say, hey, we've got this project. Hopefully, it's a weekly or monthly project where it's repeatable
Right.
data collection, right? That's really what we try to shoot for, and that's really where our national accounts really enjoy working with us because they can contact us just directly, just one person, and we can kind of help dispatch and manage those projects, and we can really standardize things. Oftentimes through establishing like a master services agreement.
Yeah.
So a lot more on that stuff to follow as well. But as far as the territory goes, yeah, you've got your own backyard. That's a part of coming on board Blue Nose. No other person would work within that backyard of yours.
And then you obviously this maybe negotiation is not the right word, but collaboration and discussions happen about where that is. Like I might live in Clemson,
Yeah,
but for whatever reason, I want my territory to be in Greenville or Anderson or
absolutely.
someplace local. Okay, that makes tons of
Totally,
sense.
totally. Yeah. It's definitely it's really we lean pretty heavily on the franchise owner because again they know their area,
Right.
and there's nothing that says that you have to live in your territory either, right? If you live in Clemson but you want Greenville because that makes the most sense from a business strategy standpoint, then yeah, go for
Right.
it, capture
Right.
that.
Well, let's kind of switch gears again. So I'm the owner of my company, right? So I'm a franchise owner, so I've got the Blue Nose Aerial name on it, but I own the company. What about the equipment? How does that
Yeah.
work? Do I need to buy that? Is there equipment that you recommend? Is there a rental program in case there's something unique like, the blue list or green list or whatever, depending on the client? How does that all work?
Yeah, I love that. So that's a great question. It's super important. And as and I'm sure most of your listeners are well aware, there's a lot of initiatives that are taking place both at the federal and state level regarding drone manufacturing. So it's important that we kind of keep our eyes wide open on that. Within our initial franchise fee includes a drone kit, right? And so there's about 10 different tiers for franchisees to choose from. And it depends on what they want to do, right? It depends on their local market. It depends on the type of deliverables that they're interested in, what they're passionate about. But it also depends on things that you alluded to, like Blue UAS, Green UAS, NDAA compliant. Once you start getting into that realm, obviously the cost of the drone becomes much more expensive, of course, right? And that's pretty well known. But But I think the important part is to understand what your market looks like, maybe even your geographic region, right? In winter months,
Hmm.
sometimes there's some seasonal components of what we do. So keeping all of that in mind, help that kind of influence your decision on which drone kit that you select. Sometimes, in fact, one of our more recent franchise owners who just came on board in South Carolina actually will have drone equipment already. And as
Already,
long
yeah.
as that's, yeah, so if it's comparable equipment or better, that's fantastic because then we reduce the cost of the initial franchise fee because they already own the equipment. The bulk of that franchise fee is in equipment acquisition. So it just depends on the type of equipment that you're looking for. We do a lot of work with DJI. We're starting to kind of dabble into the LiDAR realm as well.
Yeah.
We just recently purchased an M350 with the L2 lidar sensor. So, which kind of leads me into what you mentioned about our rental program, which is fantastic for a lot of our franchisees. We focus on a high level of kind of an let's say sophisticated platform that's not going to break the bank, that can do a lot of things well.
Right.
A lot of times that looks like the Mavic 3 Enterprise. We do a lot
Right.
of work with that and the RTK module. But every now and then we'll have clients that have, maybe it's a thermal inspection and our
Right.
franchise owner may not have a thermal sensor. They can rent it from us, right? So we
Right.
ship out, that thermal sensor to them so that they can keep those costs to a bare minimum while still capitalizing on that project, making sure that they've got the right equipment necessary to actually conduct that mission appropriately, and then they send it back to us. That's been a tremendously successful program for us. We've been doing this for several years now, actually, and that's been really really helpful.
Yeah, I bet as things, who knows what happens with the Chinese drone ban at the end of the year or whatever. A solution to that, or at least a partial solution, is a central organization having a Skydio X10 or whatever it happens to be, which comes with a pretty shockingly high price tag associated with it. To not have to float that initial capital cost and can rent it out until you generate enough work to justify it. That makes a ton of sense. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but tell me a little bit about website development and then eventually into like the advertising piece. But let's start with the website. Do I get my own website? Is it like a website? Is it Blue Nose Aerial / Joe's business? Is it my own? Can I have my own? What all does that look like?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So bluenoseaerial.com is our main website. We're constantly updating that, and we focus a lot on search engine optimization and keywords and indexing so that we're right there on page one, line one of
Right.
Google, whatever that might be, right? So that is an ongoing process. But one of the other things that we do for the franchise owners when they come on board is establish their franchisee landing page. So in essence, that's that would look like bluenoseaerial.com slash Clemson, right, or whatever it is that you
Right.
deem necessary for your local market. So we build that for you, and it's got your contact information, it's got your bio, your pick, and that's a great way for leads to come directly to our website, go to our locations page, and say, "Yep, I need this project done in Clemson. Oh, here's my guy," right? And so they can contact you directly. The other side of that too is that we have our standard just inquiry form, like a general submission form. So that'll come directly to my inbox, which I then forward off to
Right.
franchise owners in that local area for them to capitalize on as well. So it's a very collaborative aspect of what we do with the website itself, which also kind of ties into the Google business page, right? And so we
Okay.
set that up for you as well, so you can have a bit more of that kind of that digital presence available. Yeah.
Well, so I mean, I'm not a search engine optimization wizard, but I do know enough that if you've got a large page and you've got clicks from all over everywhere going to the central homepage and then kind of distributed out, that gets you a lot higher on the ratings than Joe's really good drone business of Clemson, which might get 5 at best or whatever it happens to be. That's not going to the top of the list. So that makes a lot of sense. As far as like, and I think I got a piece of this with your answer, it sounds like that there is a Google advertising campaign at the national level. But if let's just say I want more, like I just feel like my market, it could be better served if I get a more of investment in that. How does that look? Can I buy more of it? Is that independent through me? Is there anything Blue Nose Corporate does that can kind of help me get started? What all does that look and feel like?
Yeah, and this is where you're touching on, I think, one of the key aspects of any franchise model is because behind this, right, is what's typically referred to as like a royalty structure. And within that royalty structure also oftentimes includes an advertising fund. So when you come on board, you're now a part of a team where all of the other franchise owners across the country are contributing just a little bit of their gross sales each month to a national advertising fund. For us, that is directly positioned and siphoned off to a partnership that we have with a company out of Oregon currently, and they manage our Google advertising campaign nationwide. And they are experts. I'm just like you. I'm not a search engine
Right.
optimization expert. That's quickly above my pay grade. So I don't know all of that stuff, but they're pros at it, and they're constantly, tweaking that and making sure that that's maximizing our advertising dollars. So what that looks like is leads are generated through these, Google search algorithms. They come to our website. They either contact me or they contact the franchisee directly. So we're literally creating those leads. And now we're leveraging the volume of the franchisees who are
Mhm.
contributing, towards that advertising fund. So that's a big component of how we generate leads. There's a lot there though too, because the franchise owner, like I said, from the outset, is a business owner first,
Right.
then they're a drone operator, right? This is a key mentality. So, we also enable them to set up their own local advertising should they choose to. We have that same partnership where you can have, kind of hyper local marketing efforts if you'd like to work with them. If you're a pro at Google advertising, and
Right.
some of our franchise owners are, they can certainly do that on their own accord as well. But there's a real it's important to kind of keep that in mind that advertising is a key part of your business development. That's a big part of the kind
Right.
of the strategic initiative there. So it's just like anything. While we can kind of expedite your business setup process and provide you with all the tools and support and training, it does take time, right? It takes
Yeah.
it takes money to make money, so you got to kind of invest in that.
And the local stuff. I mean, just beating the pavement. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
different things
totally.
that people do. Can speak at a a construction conference that's local to South Carolina, or mailer. I mean, whatever it happens to be. There's a lot of things that happen at the local level to generate business.
So critically important. While we can have these national accounts and national advertising campaigns, the emphasis really ought to be on your local market as well. It's a two-pronged
Right.
effort. So, maybe that's joining your chamber of commerce or speaking at some type of local event, handing out flyers. Even just as basic as just go outside and fly your drone, right? That's
Right.
going to drive attention. People are going to ask you questions about it.
Right.
So plug into your local community and go from there as well.
So I totally hear you about generating your own leads, and everything you just said. It resonates. I get that 1,000%. But diving back to where we kind of started with the national generation of leads, or the generation of national leads, or from the corporate center. And this next question is a tough one because I know there's a million like different depends. I mean, territories are different, markets different, seasons are different. But order of magnitude wide, like what am I looking at? If I buy a franchise, and I've got a decent territory, it's a decent month of the year, I'm decent at everything, median everything. What kind of leads am I looking at? Am I looking at one a day, one a week, one a month, one a year? What's an order of magnitude?
Yeah, that is a tough one, right? Because that always shifts, right? So it really, that's a moving target, and those numbers fluctuate throughout the year, of course. That's why we emphasize the two-pronged approach, right? Hey, yeah, let's plug into our national accounts and our national advertising, but also work in your local area as well, because that's going to kind of help mitigate some of the fluctuations behind, generating leads. So that's really important. I mean, I wouldn't give you a specific number like, oh, it's going to be,
Right.
X amount per week, right? I couldn't do that. And obviously, like I mentioned earlier, there's some seasonal components depending on your geographic region, of course. So that's really why we're focusing so much, especially lately, on franchisee profitability and making sure we're doing some pretty thorough financial analyses and understanding, all right, well, what type of outreach efforts have you been doing? How's that working for you? And really measuring that, trying to quantify your business development efforts. That's kind of a newer initiative for us at Blue Nose, and it's going to be really important going forward. But
Well, how about on the pricing side? So, I mean, do you provide some guidance? Like, let's just say I'm in another life, I was a contractor and I kind of know what my billable rate is. Like, I could probably estimate how many miles I got to drive and how many hours a job will do and all this kind of stuff. But I don't want to leave money on the table either. So if my hard costs are $1,000 for something, but I know the market might be 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever it happens to be, do you provide some guidance on what a fair price is, where I don't spook clients, or at
yeah,
the same
yeah,
time I get what the market is bearing?
absolutely. Yeah, that's critically important. And it kind of ties into exactly what we talked about initially about, okay, well, great. I'm Part 107 certified and maybe I've got some training what now? How do I generate leads? How do I, take care of these clients? How do I provide competitive quotes, right? So that I'm
Hmm.
not, getting fleeced or something, but we're also, it's a competitive rate. So
Right.
what we do for that is we call that our pricing guide, lo and behold, right? That pricing guide is actually embedded within your operations portal. In
Okay.
our product library. So that product library is literally just a drop down box where you can say, all right, here's my client. They want a 3D model of this, building, go. And then you've got the ability to apply sales tax if you need to, discounts as well. You can create new products and services. So it's not all encompassing, but it really does kind of encapsulate probably 95% of what we do is within that product library. But the franchise owner, again, as a business owner, has discretion on what that actually looks like. More often than not, most of our projects are quoted between 150 and $250 per hour. That's typically how we
Right.
generate quotes. A lot of variability there. Again, of course, it depends on your local market, your client,
Sure.
the complexity of the deliverable, right? So there's a lot of variation in there as always, but that's typically
I would think the equipment too, right? If it's, I mean, if it's a
absolutely.
LiDAR versus thermal versus photogrammetry versus a, still picture, that plays into it too,
Absolutely.
right?
We had a client reach out just recently asking us to do miles and miles and miles of electricity pole inspections, right? And like,
Right.
and I should say power line inspections. And this is where it gets into equipment restrictions sometimes. So like, hey,
Mm,
can you give us a quote for all of this just using normal, whatever you
right.
would typically use, and
Right. Right.
then
Right.
give us a quote for a blue UAS option too.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely need to consider that especially when it comes to infrastructure projects like that.
Well, I mean, that's a totally fair point. Is there a typical job? I mean, I'm sure there's not, but is there a type of data acquisition that's more common than others? I would think it would be photogrammetry, but I don't know if that's true or not.
It is. For us, we do a lot of work in photogrammetry, primarily within construction. That's construction progress monitoring. Sometimes we'll do a lot of work in like pre-site surveys for like renewable energy. We do a lot of work lately in solar farms, like large scale solar farms. That's a big piece of it as well. So photogrammetry is a big part of the work that we do at Blue Nose, but we do work in a lot of different fields. That could be commercial marketing, it could be telecommunications, a lot of inspection work, just high resolution photography, videography, things like that. We kind of dabble in all of it, right? So we cast a pretty wide net, and really that starts with our focus within the Blue Nose Academy, which is our onboarding learning management system, right? So every franchise owner goes to the Blue Nose Academy, and we speak to all of that, right? So we want to make sure that they're at least aware of what this looks like and how you would provide those deliverables to those clients. But again, there's variation in your local market and the
Right.
type of work that you're interested in providing. So yeah.
Do you find that it's a lot of it is just data acquisition, or is it data acquisition and processing, or is it really a mix of everything?
It could be a mix of everything, which is why we provide really the whole platform for the franchise owner to leverage however they see fit. Whatever their clients' demands are, we want to make sure that franchise owner has the tools available to meet the client's requirements. A lot of times, especially when it's our national accounts, I would say it's primarily in data acquisition because a
Mm,
lot of these national accounts are actually software companies. So they'll have
right.
their own ability, kind of proprietary processing platform with their own level of analysis that they then provide their clients. But what they don't have is an ability to capture the data at scale across the country, sometimes even globally. So that's why they come to us, right? So that way
Right.
we can kind of, hey, here we go, franchise owner. We've got this national account. They need this type of data collected. All you need to do is just provide, go capture the data, provide it over to the client, and then we're good to go. And those are fantastic because it's oftentimes repeatable business opportunities. And that's really what we try to shoot for.
Gotcha. So, well, and again, this is another one of those depends question. It largely depends on the franchise owner, their commitment, their much time they have, the market, all this kind of good stuff. But in your experience, do most franchise owners make this a full-time job, or is this a job that kind of supplements either supplements another job, or maybe kind of post-retirement supplemental income?
Yeah.
What is it? What's normal?
I love that question. And really, and you're totally right. There's a lot of variation there and it just depends. But we built that we built Blue Nose that way on purpose. It's designed to be flexible. So if you've got a full-time job and you want to just stay active in the drone industry and you're doing Blue Nose as kind of a part-time effort, you can certainly do that. That's your prerogative. We don't have like monthly sales quotas or revenue requirements that need to be met. This is something where we want to, create a very low cost model where you can just take this and leverage this however you see fit. That said, of course, the folks that do this full time are more profitable, of course, right? They're putting more time into it, so they're
Right.
making more money, obviously. Some of our franchise owners are doing it just like you mentioned. This is like a retirement project for them, and or some of them are maybe approaching retirement and they're building something that they could then hand off as a legacy. But it's really kind of over to the franchise owner and how they want to run their business. But we're here as a continual method of support, standardization, and generating leads to focus on franchisee profitability.
Perfect. So without getting into specifics, because again, there's tons of variabilities and all those kind of things. Tell me a little bit about the structure to buy in. Things I'm interested in or I'm questioning about is there like an initial buy-in of like some lump sum value and then something recurrent? Is it a profit sharing where I do work and X percent goes to me, Y percent goes to you? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Blue Nose, just like most franchise models, for us, there are three cost components. The first one is the initial franchise fee, and that ranges anywhere from about 9,000 to about 74,000, depending on the drone kit that you select. So if you're interested in really providing, Blue UAS platforms
Right.
and large scale, then yeah, that's going to be on the high end of that spectrum right there. But more often than not, I'd say most of our franchise owners are probably their initial franchise fees probably around like 10 to 15,000 ish,
Okay.
depending on what drone kit that they select.
Including some reasonable equipment to get you started and bringing in work.
Yeah. More often than not, that's usually like the DJI Mavic 3 series, whether that's
Hmm.
the Enterprise or the Thermal. It just depends on what they want to get
Right.
involved with. So that would be included in that initial franchise fee, as well as all the onboarding and training, Blue Nose Academy, all the previous setup stuff that we've already talked about. So once we've gotten you through that and we complete that before takeoff checklist and we launch your location, now it's off to the races, right? Now we're working together arm in arm, developing the brand, earning revenue for all of us, and that obviously takes money, right? That operations portal
Right.
that I referenced, where it's got the data processor and the CRM and the Blue Nose Academy, all that stuff. That's really where your monthly technology fee goes, right? So you've got the initial franchise fee and then your monthly technology fee, which is $295. And then once you've earned revenue, right? Once you start getting those clients and you're making money, then it is that royalty structure that I alluded to earlier. That's like the glue that keeps it all together. That's 6% of your gross monthly sales is a royalty that's assessed. So 4% goes to the franchise development, and then 2% goes to that national advertising fund that I mentioned. So that
Awesome.
is again, that's how we keep everything going. That's how we generate leads. That's how we continue to focus on franchisee profitability. So yeah, just three cost components: the initial franchise fee, the monthly tech fee, and then the royalty structure.
Awesome. That's good stuff and great information. So I just really have one more final question, and then I think we're at time. This has been amazing. It's really, really been great. From your experience, and again, I'm new into this. I've got some training, but I'm still nervous, and we're still talking about big dollars, and I'm excited, but I want to make good investments and all this kind of stuff. What are the big challenges that a new franchisee might face? And I guess maybe I'll rephrase it in another way: is if I'm going to fail, what's going to cause me to fail? What's like what am I going to mess up, or what's going to happen? And that's the reason my business failed.
Love that. Yeah, that's a really, really important question, and I like how you phrase that, especially kind of on the second half of that. And that ties into what I always say. I think it's a TED talk where it's like, what's your why, right? Why are
Hmm.
you getting into business ownership? This is important because while drones are commercially available, we can do a lot of cool things with them, and it's just fascinating technology, and it's constantly evolving. When you dabble into the business ownership side of things, and you're really, hey, if I'm going to make a go of this and do this full time or however you see fit, it's important to really have your eyes wide open on what that looks like really what the what that demand is going to be, whether that's time or resources or energy, whatever it is. I would say for us, more often than not, if you're going to fail, it's probably because you don't have the time.
Okay.
Time is a big one, right? So we focus on streamlining your operation, getting you set up, providing expert training, access to clients, all of that stuff. That infrastructure is in place. But if you don't have the time to devote to any business, right, let alone a Blue Nose franchise, I think that's where you're going to probably find that you're gonna struggle. So if you're going to fail in business, I think it's probably if you're underestimating the amount of time that might
Right.
be required.
It's like any home project, right? You think it'll take it an hour and one trip to
Yeah.
Lowe's, and it's all day and multiple trips to Lowe's, right? So,
I think, but it's an interesting point because it's just like one thing. When you do something for the first time, it oftentimes takes much,
mm,
much longer. When you do it the second time, it's a lot shorter. And then the third time, man, you've got this dialed in. And I think that directly ties into the benefits of any franchise model. It's
right,
because now you're plugging into this knowledge hive where
right,
people have
right.
done this before and they've got that experience, not only the franchise owners, but also the subject matter experts that are part of the Blue Nose corporate team. So we've made those mistakes, right? We've been there, we've
That's
done
awesome.
that, and you're plugging into it so that to try to avoid making those mistakes and to try to really focus on streamlining your operation. So that is where, while time might be the greatest obstacle, kind of a chief hurdle to consider, I think a franchise model does a really good job of kind of mitigating some
Mitigating
of
that.
those potential risks. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, listen, Tanner, this has been amazing. Thank you so very much for chatting with us. So for our audience that is like, yeah, this is right up my alley. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
No, Joe. It's been a great opportunity for me, and thank you so much for having me on a second time. But yeah, for anybody that's interested, please check out BlueNoseAerial.com. And blue like the color, nose like on your face, and aerial is AERIAL.com. So BlueNoseAerial.com. Fill out one of the forms that'll come straight to my inbox. I'll contact you within minutes usually. So I'd love to chat with you. We're always looking for people to join the team, and yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity, Joe. Thank you.
Well, good deal. Well, thank you, Tanner. And we'll definitely put that information in the show notes. So, for all you guys that are listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We're really, really pumped about the second season. And we're really excited about the new offerings that we have, for, opportunities for veterans, for our entrepreneurs that are out there, for the second class that we're offering some really exciting stuff. And I am just like uber pumped about it. So thanks again for tuning in. We got more shows to come for the next season. So hang in there. Thanks everybody, and look forward to the next one. Thanks for listening to the Clemson Drone Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Learn more about our online training offerings by going to clemsondrone.com. Thanks again. And remember, at Clemson Drone, the sky's not the limit. It's just the beginning. Thank you for listening to the Clemson Drone Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and write a review. I'm told this makes a big difference in the algorithms used to recommend the podcast to others. Thank you.